All right. So I really spent a tremendous amount of time Thursday night. I was so inspired to create a Megillah. Like we have on Purim Megillas Esther, this is the Megillah, the scroll of 2026, the miracles and the hand of God, basically from 2020 until today. Meaning now we're in a war. In a war, it's a good time to look back because it's very easy to forget. Just like story of Purim, right? The story of Purim was spanned 9 years. Many things there seem very unrelated, like cool things that happen and are cool and you forget. Ahasuerus has a 6-month drunken party culminating in Vashti's execution. Okay, wow, what's going on? Big stuff. But then life moved on. 4 years later, Esther becomes queen. Oh my gosh, what's going on? And then you stop talking about it. 5 years later is Haman's plot against the Jews. So we have 9 years. And when you hear it in the scroll, in the Megillah, in 40 minutes, boom, 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 Ahasuerus' party, Vashti, Esther, Haman, you see it. When you're living it, you might not. So that's really my goal here. I want to show 2 things. One, it's very easy to forget because we live and get distracted and forget amazing miracles that keep happening. And the hand of God, just like in Purim, the long vision, seeing God did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. And when you look at it now over the past 6 years, you really see, just like in Purim, God in a very flimsy disguise. So I want to recap the miracles we've experienced primarily in the last 2.5 years and the chain of events for the past 6 years that really culminating in the killing of Khomeini, in currently destroying the evil of Iran, of ancient Persia. I'm sure I missed many things, but this is what I remembered and what I researched Thursday night to really give the most accurate testimony of this Megillah, of this scroll, of uncovering the hidden. Just like the term Megillas Esther, the scroll of Esther, Megillah is revelation, Esther is concealment. In the scroll, we don't see God's name. Concealment. Everything that happened was completely natural. But if you look, you see the Megillah, the revelation of God. So that's what I want to do here. Megillas Esther of 2026, highlighting so many ways we see God and the chain of events that God put together to create what we are currently experiencing. And just to put everything in perspective before we begin, to understand, as I'm sure everyone here does, but in case someone missed it, the entire existence of Iran, goal was to destroy Israel and America, right? Israel, they call the small Satan. America, they call the big Satan. Once the Spanish foreign minister, he was in Iran visiting Khomeini, and he was trying to understand what's his foreign policy. He wasn't getting a clear response. So he said, clever question. He said, what's your first thought on waking in the morning? And his answer was how to destroy Israel. So that's the evil we're dealing with. Iran spends about $24 billion every year on their defense, which is about 25% of their budget. Their annual government budget, 25% goes to defense, meaning offense, and funding what they call the axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, the Iraqi Shiite militias. They give about $2 million a year to fund these terrorist groups. They're axis of resistance. So what we're going to see, the hand of God over these past 6 years was to destroy the power of these critical proxies, to weaken Iran and to remove their support to really enable the Iranian destruction. And this is very Mashiach, because it's very Mashiach to celebrate and thank God for the miracles. We're told about one of the greatest kings the Jews ever had, Hizkiah. And he was so great, so holy, so connected to God that he should have been the Messiah. He should have been the Redeemer. He should have been Mashiach. But it says that the attribute of judgment complained and said, nah, Hizkiah, you did for him, and he didn't thank you. And he's going to be Mashiach? Now, we could discuss that at length because he did thank God and he thanked after the miracles. He should have thanked before, but not to go into all the depth of discussion. The bottom line point is we see from here a tremendous connection between thanking God for the miracles and Mashiach. So we really learn from here that thanking and acknowledging the miracles really is connected to bringing redemption. So it's very Mashiach to look back and thank God for a lot of miracles. And just like Purim, So many miracles, and yet all within nature. So basically, it's almost like we have a choice. We can look at nature and see miracles, or if you want, you can look at miracles and see nature. So I'm going to go through 19 such situations we've had since January of 2020 until today. Miracles and critical steps leading to where we are now, when it seems very realistic and plausible, and God willing will happen, really the destruction of this evil in a very, very practical manner. So the first thing I want to focus on, again, going back to 2020, January 3rd of 2020, there was a drone strike in Baghdad, assassinating Soleimani. He was Iran's most powerful military commander. He was the architect of the entire proxy network. And 2020, this is Trump's round one. And because of things he had done against Americans, Trump said, we're getting him. And they followed him, and they found a vulnerable moment, and they eliminated him. Now, why are we talking about that now? This happened 6 years ago. And I'm sure when it happened, most of us heard about it. It was in the news and like, okay, cool. Another bad guy gone. I'm looking at that as the first step God did to create the possibility of today. No, I'm sure there were steps before and there were steps after. And as I said, some steps are too subtle for me to know. Some steps I'm sure are classified, so I don't know. And some things I was thinking about and wasn't sure to include or not. But this to me is so obvious because he built this entire proxy network. Hamas, the Houthis, the Iraqis, Hezbollah. He funded them. He ran them. And since 2020, with him gone, again, who at that time was understanding what would be 6 years later, but Iran's strategic brain is gone. And since then, we've seen proxies fumble. We've seen failure of coordination very strongly in October 7th, a failure of coordination that, thank God, tremendously minimized what they were trying to do to Israel, to the Jewish people. And every fumble, every failure goes back to this moment, January 3rd of 2020, that again, most of us applauded and forgot, but really, I think, was a critical step to allow what's happening now to be. Something else happened in 2020 that also, I think, is really significant today, which was on September 17th of 2020, was the official Abraham Accords. See on the White House lawn, and people could say, oh, yeah, that was a Photoshop moment. That was a PR moment. It was actually significant. Here we have 3 Arabic countries. Yes, not Arabic countries that are bent on our destruction, but still Arabic countries. The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and they all committed to normalize relationships with Israel. And obviously, Trump's Jewish son-in-law, Kushner, was the one that brokered this deal. But this is the first time since the existence of the state of Israel in 1948 that Israel and Arab states are sharing intelligence, are coordinating security, are building economic ties. All of these nations fear Iran as much as Israel. It's a shared threat. That's a bond. And today, in 2026, Israel's not fighting alone. And today, as the world sees that Iran is not only, of course, primarily striking Israel, but is also sending missiles to the United Arab Emirates, to Bahrain, to Saudi Arabia, to all these Sunni countries, Israel's not alone. It's a tremendous step to give credence and legitimacy to the war that is happening now. It makes it much more significant, maybe not in our eyes, but in the eyes of the world. Now we're going to go to October 7th. Now, of course, October 7th is a tremendous space of pain, and we all know a lot about October 7th. I just want to focus on how October 7th is highlighting what I'm saying here in terms of the hand of God, the miracles. Are we seeing nature? Are we seeing miracles? And the breakdown of the Iranian proxy's axis of resistance that is very significant today. Iran is the center. I think of it like an octopus with all the extensions. So Iran's the center, and you've got Hamas, you've got the Houthis, but the largest proxy that Iran has is Hezbollah. Hezbollah has 100 100,000 terrorist fighters. Hezbollah has a tremendous arsenal of missiles. And when October 7th happened, the question was, why is Hamas doing this alone? That's strange. If there's this attack on Israel to such an extent, you'd think it would be this coordinated attack from the north and the south to go like this to us, as we saw in previous wars on Israel. Well, we found afterwards, the intelligence found as Israel conquered Gaza, Sinwar's plans. And the plan was that October 7th was not supposed to be on October 7th. It was supposed to be later. And it was supposed to be a coordinated attack. Hamas doing what they did in the south, Hezbollah firing 50 to 100,000 rockets on Israel in the north, Hezbollah invading the north, Hezbollah doing in the north what Hamas did in the south, but to a much greater degree because they are a much larger force, invading, killing, burning, taking hostages. And also the Arabs in Yehuda and Shomron, which means in Israel proper, right, just south of Jerusalem. All those Arabs spontaneously, so to speak, uprising and going from town to town in those areas, murdering, creating millions of dead Jews, millions of hostage Jews. And their hope was to destroy the entire country of Israel. Not only did we see this by Sinwar, but also as Hezbollah got engaged and the IDF went in and conquered and attacked and took strategic information they found, they saw that just like Hamas had in the south, Hezbollah had maps of the settlements, identifying where Jews lived, plans. So literally exactly what Hamas did, Hezbollah was planning to do at a much greater scale. They saw the same type of trucks, the same type of munitions, everything was ready to roll. But for some reason, for some God reason, Sinwar jumped the gun. And he went early, without informing Hezbollah, without informing Iran. And they were like, what's going on? Actually, as part of the plans, besides Hamas and Hezbollah and the spontaneous uprising, Iran was supposed to be firing ballistic missiles at the same time. That was also part of the plan, the coordinated plan to, God forbid, destroy us. But as I said, Sinwar went early. So going early, Hezbollah is like, wait, what are you doing? They're confused. And they're like a little bit upset. We're supposed to do this together. You're trying to take all the glory for yourself? We don't know if we want to join your party. And Iran is confused. And the spontaneous revolutions were confused. And the Jews were able to crush and stop. And it didn't happen. I mean, there was obviously tremendous pain, tremendous loss of lives. We don't have to go through, obviously, what the hostages did. We've suffered. I mean, in 1948, in the War of Independence, 1% of the Jews of Israel died. In the Six-Day War, the most crazy miracles we've seen, there were losses. So there were horrors on October 7th. But if you think of what was supposed to, God forbid, have been, and didn't happen, and it was so obvious it should have been that before the IDF found all this intelligence documentation, it was a question everyone was talking about. Why didn't Hezbollah join the party? And they did join, but later, and at that point, we were able to push them off and make sure it didn't happen, because obviously the IDF was on high alert and understood what Hezbollah probably is going to try to do. I was able to stop them before they did it. Now we know they were supposed to do it. And just a tremendous kindness of God, it didn't happen. It doesn't take away the horror of October 7th, but it highlights God's kindness in being there, in preventing, instead of the 1,200, literally, their plan was for millions of dead Jews, millions of hostage Jews, and the destruction of the entire state. When we look at that, we can see, wow, look at God's kindness. Why did Sinwar do it? We have no clue. Look at God's kindness. Look at the miracles. It's really training our eyes. Sometimes, of course, we don't have the information, but we can still suppose and assume. A lot of times when we see it and when we don't see it, suppose and assume there's a very kind God that's also involved in the picture. And even when the picture doesn't look so good, there's still a very kind God involved in the picture. And that's, I think, just a general lesson for for all of us in many, many personal, as well as obviously global, as well as things going on in Israel, as well as Jews all over the world. And sometimes the information comes out later. And when we see, even in tragedies and pain, oh, wow, there was a kind God there mitigating what could have, should have, was supposed to happen to what did happen. Doesn't take away the pain of what happened, but still gives us space to be very, very, very grateful to God. Continuing to really, really just keep on going and seeing, again, seeing the kindness, seeing the miracles, and seeing the steps. So we saw 2020, the elimination of this critical figure in the proxies. We see the Abraham Accords. We see miracles. Now let's get to 2024. April 12th, 2024, Saturday night, first Saturday night of Nisan, I was there. Iran sent 200 ballistic missiles. A complete and total failure and embarrassment to Iran, because not one Jew was killed. And I was there. So I can personally say, not from reports, not from videos, from being there, the next day, Sunday, Jerusalem is bustling. And just to put it in perspective, the entire Gulf War, Israel was struck by 39 missiles. This one time, on April 12th of 2024, we received about 200. And of course, we have things in place. There's something called the Iron Dome. There's something called David's Slingshot. There's something called the Arrow System. But even with the Iron Dome and David's Slingshot and the Arrow System, it's not 100% fail-proof. I won't say it is, and it's not meant to be. I mean, it's meant to be as good as it can be. But obviously, some things get through. And that night, April 12th, 2024, God gave 100% protection. And again, it's just like, on one hand, a critical piece, as I'm going to explain, in what Israel did afterwards because of this, but also just a thank you, God, for the miracles that we just, oh, wow, so cool. That one went through and we keep moving. Stop, appreciate. And very important, put in perspective for today, this is the same God with the same love for us and the same protection of us. That was April 12th. Now, at this point, I can just say personally, by April, May, I understood enough to understand that the main source of all of this horror and all this terror is Iran. They're the source. They're the funders of it. They're the promoters of it. All of the terrorist groups we're dealing with, it's all coming from Iran. But I thought in my simple brain, what can we do about that? Like, yeah, it's not a terrorist group. Iran's a country. Iran's a country of 90 million people. You know, if you look on the map, Iran's a lot bigger than Israel and a lot stronger than Israel. So it's all coming from Iran. But what can Israel do? We could try to take down Hamas. Hezbollah is much larger, 100,000 fighters. But okay, we have no choice. We're going to deal with them. We're going to do our best to deal with them. But Iran, that's a country. So how can we ever destroy them? How can we ever uproot what's really the core evil? And then May 19th, 2024. May 19th, 2024. I don't know if you remember the date, but I'm sure you all remember what happened. The Iranian president, helicopter crash. That was bad weather. It was foggy, fatal helicopter crash. I'm sure we all thought the same thing then. This makes no sense. He was in a convoy of 3 helicopters. Bad weather, a lot of fog. Obviously, the Iranian president, since of 90 million, he should have a very high-level helicopter, and he should have a very, very experienced pilot. And yet, God runs the world. The 2 other helicopters made it through. They got through the convoy, but Raisi's, his crashed. And I remember then feeling exactly this point. Okay, I'm concerned that we can't take down Iran, the source of all this violence. Give God some credit, you know? If we can't do it, if we don't have the power to do it, God surely does. Again, another miracle in the string of Benny. That's such an arch villain with so much blood. Not only Jewish blood, not only American blood, blood of his own people gone. And not only is he gone, but his loss weakened this entire evil empire and led to other breaks in the system breaks in a system that's been imprisoning 90 million people for 50 years. Moving on, in 2024, a lot of exciting things happened. That was in May. Let's go to July. July 13th, 2024. This is an American miracle. You might know, you might forget the date. You all remember what happened. July 13th, Trump survived an assassination attempt on him that should have killed him. And I think when we see this, I know for myself, and I'm sure for many other people, the fact that it got that far, should have killed him and didn't, felt like very much a sign of God. Like, this person's critical. This guy, Thomas Crook, should never, ever have been able to be on that roof. There was enough security there, enough people saw in the investigation afterwards, hours before he was noted, he was looked for. Like, were they so incompetent that he's on a roof? And there was security in the building, but they didn't know that someone's on the roof, the rifle? Maybe God did it that way for it to be so obvious that this is a hand of God moment. We should know God is protecting him, and God's protecting him for a reason. That was the first assassination attempt. He survived a second one a few months later, but this one was so insane. The bullet missed his head by less than an inch. Literally, as I'm sure we all remember, he turned his head to point to some chart, and that saved his life. If he had turned his head a split second earlier, Rook would have adjusted the rifle. If he had done it a split second later, there wouldn't have been a split second later, right? So what happened? He's wounded in his upper right ear. He fired 8 rounds from a rifle that killed a person in the audience, that critically injured 2 others. And how did this happen? Really felt like God was giving us a message, because how did he get to that point? And yet at the same time, how did Trump survive? 4 seconds after he began firing, one of the security fired and knocked out his rifle, and 12 seconds later, he was killed. But just enough time for us to see literally hand of God in Trump's survival. And why would God be doing that? As I'm looking at it, for what's going on now, to put him in place, to be there, to do what none of the American presidents have done until now. It was just really God saying, yes. I thought similarly, of course, hindsight is 2020. I remember, of course, when Trump won the first time around, it was like, what? Everyone in the world was like, no way. I mean, Hillary Clinton already had her stage set of glass, the entire 50 state or 48 of the states, continental USA glass stage to accept her victory. But God wanted and he won. But then the next time, God wanted and he lost. And then the next time, God wanted and he won. And that's so interesting, because seemingly it's a lot easier to win twice in a row. And now he's making this comeback, and everything that was against him. How in the world did he win if he lost? And then why, again, if God wants, why did he lose then? But again, with this beautiful 2020 hindsight, it's like, well, maybe God had him lose that second election because he wouldn't be around now to make this war. And God had him win now because now he's around to make this war. Just again, looking back, creating our Megillah, creating our scroll of Esther, and just seeing so many things that are like obvious enough that we could realize them and recognize hand of God to get to this point now. So that was in July 13th of 2024. July 31st of 2024, something happened, not in America, not in Israel, but in Iran, that again was a critical piece in the psychological war against Iran and their axis of resistance, and was a practical piece. Ismail Haniyeh, who is he? The political leader of Hamas. There's Sinwar, the military leader. If you're a terrorist organization, you need a military leader to be the leader, but you also do need a political leader, the official ruler, so to speak. That wasn't Sinwar. Sinwar is the military leader. It was Haniyeh. He's the political leader of Hamas. Where was he July 31st? He was in Tehran, in the Iranian capital. Why was he there? Well, again, seeing the chain of events. We know how God took down the previous Iranian president. Well, he was there for the inauguration ceremony of the Iranian president. Was he in a vulnerable place? Not at all. He was in a military guest house. A guest house run by the Iranian military. He was with his bodyguard, and no one knows how, but somehow Israel got him when he's in Iran. And this tremendously weakened Hamas because their political leader is gone, and also tremendously weakened all of these players because it's a huge piece in the psychological warfare. We can and we will get you. And we can get you in Tehran itself. And I'm saying until today, I mean, I'm sure someone knows, but the world doesn't know, still classified. How was he killed? Was there a missile strike? Was it a remotely detonated explosive planted in the room? We don't know, but we can and we will get you, and you won't even know how. That was on the 31st. The day before, I still remember this because this was 24 crazy hours. Fuad Shukr. Who was he? He was a head of Hezbollah that had a $5 million U.S. bounty on his head for his involvement in the 1983 Beirut Marine Barracks bombing, which killed 248 U.S. service members. A senior Hezbollah military commander, so significant. And again, he has a $5 million bounty on his head. So nobody knew how to find him. He would never use anything traceable. No walkie-talkies or pagers for him. For sure, no cell phones. Everything's personal courier. Nobody knows where he was, but somehow the IDF intelligence, the Mossad knew. And on July 30th, they sent a very specific, designated, targeted airstrike to where he was in Beirut and took him down. What was the loss of life for Israel in this very high-level attack? Zero. Not one Jewish life threatened, not one Jewish life taken. And this senior Hezbollah military commander gone. And again, it's like, how did they know where he was? How did they get him? How did they get him and go back to Israel untouched? I mean, America can't do it. America's willing to pay someone $5 million to do it, but America can't do it. And it's not like the IDF are superheroes. They're human beings that make mistakes, that know and don't know many things. But when God wants, it's like boom, boom. Within 24 hours, top Hezbollah military commander gone. Head of Hamas, the political head of the entire Hamas, gone within 24 hours. And it's both like, thank you, God, for the miracles, and understanding what God's doing, that he's critically weakening these Iranian proxies who exist for one reason, to destroy us. Critically weakening them. And when we stop and we pause and we say, thank you, God, we also know today, same point. So that was in July of 2024. August, I remember this also very well, because my daughter was supposed to fly to Israel, and I'm like, okay, I guess no planes are going to fly after this, but her plane did fly. August 25th, 2024, Sunday morning, 7 a.m. So since October 7th, Hezbollah is doing whatever they can to destroy Israel. And like, again, instead of destroying, we just keep knocking down their critical pieces. And obviously, each time we knock down, they get much weaker because they're losing all their military brains. August 25th, Hezbollah said, this is it. This is the moment. This is our October 7th. And they planned a precise attack, 7 a.m. Now, to understand the significance of this, like Hamas, but to a much greater degree, Hezbollah does everything with tunnels. They know if anything's on the surface, Israel's going to see. They're constantly scanning, and they'll destroy it. So we can't have anything on the surface. So like Hamas, but again, to a much greater degree, they have massive underground tunnels where they keep their planes, where they keep their missiles. So when we want, we take it out and shoot. And until that moment, it's underground in a tunnel. Israel can't get it. So their plan was 7 a.m., a massive array of these planes, of these missiles, are going to come out simultaneously and attack the entire country. Now, they're all underground, so obviously they can't come out at 7. You have to bring them out a little bit before. So probably starting, depending on the size, I don't know if it was from 6 or 6:15 or 6:30, they're coming out. It was 7 a.m. in the morning before Israel realizes, well, God gave Israel the info before. And by 6:45, when every plane and missile was on the surface ready to launch at 7, Israel had sent their counterattack. And at 6:45, Israel bombed these planes and missiles and destroyed all of them. Not one plane was able to fly. Not one of their planes. They were all destroyed. How did we know? I have no clue. How did we do this precision of time? While they think they're fooling us, we're fooling them. Thank you, Hezbollah, for taking all of your missiles and planes out that we have access to destroy them. And again, the IDF is not superhuman. The Mossad is not superhuman. Very human, all the limitations of human. I'm sure they make loads of mistakes, but God's miracles keep flowing. They make us look very good. Each of these events is weakening this largest terrorist proxy of the evil empire, the most significant proxy. Now, why is it the most significant proxy? And why are we focusing on this today? One, they were charged with the destruction of Israel. They're right there in the north. They took over this very weak country called Lebanon, right? They're right north of Israel. Iran is quite far. Hezbollah is our border. Literally, you can walk. So they're supposed to destroy Israel. They're supposed to make sure that Israel does not have the freedom to attack Iran. So they have this double-edged sword. On one hand, they're supposed to harass and take down us. On the other hand, if we would try to go to Iran, they're supposed to be distracting and destroying us, which is, of course, what they're trying to do today very unsuccessfully. And also, very significant because, of course, 2020 hindsight, they were the force that kept Assad of Syria in power. Now, what does Assad of Syria have to do with Hezbollah? Again, understanding the geopolitical map of the Middle East, you have Iran, Syria, Israel. Syria is a large country. Iran's a very large country. Israel's a very small country, of course. Syria is the gate, if you will, or the bridge between Israel and Iran. And of course, Syria is its own independent country with this very large military, with this horrifically evil ruler, Assad, who has the blood of countless members of his own country on his hands. He's done chemical warfare against his own country. Assad, though, in essence, was a puppet of Iran and of Russia as well. Russia and Iran were keeping Assad in power. Now, how's Iran helping Assad? Besides giving him a lot of money, they also lent him, if you will, their army of 100,000, Hezbollah. So for the many, many years, when Assad's country again and again and again tried to rebel, Hezbollah comes and smashes it all down. So these events that are critically weakening Hezbollah, losing, as we've seen since 2020, critical pieces in the brains of their organization, losing so much military assets, all of this weakens their ability to harm us, weakens their ability to stop us from harming Iran. And as we have seen, of course, we know the history, weaken their ability to keep Assad in power. Okay, that was from August 25th of 2024. We're going to go to September, a little bit later, about less than 2 weeks later, September 8th of 2024. Then less than 2 weeks later, and this is on August 25th, Hezbollah loses, besides complete failure in their attempt to harm us, but also critically loses so many of their planes and missiles. September 8th, huge miracle that maybe you heard about, and this you might not have heard about. I have to give a little background to explain it, but I want to highlight this because just showing again, weakening of Hezbollah to allow now to be, and the enormous kindness of God. Now, Iran, this proxy, 100,000 strong, Hezbollah. Iran has a lot of vested interest in keeping Hezbollah strong, as we said, to destroy Israel, their number one goal, to make sure Israel cannot attack them. How do they give Hezbollah all the weaponry it has? Well, some of it is just money that's funneled there, but they also build weaponry for it. Now, where are they building that weaponry? Well, because they want to get to Hezbollah, who's in Lebanon, it's a little cumbersome to build the weaponry in Iran and then transport this very heavy equipment all the way through Syria to get to Lebanon. So what Iran like to do is build factories in Syria to build weaponry and then much closer send it to Hezbollah. The problem was that Israel was very aware of this, and Israel would constantly be searching for any such missile production factories and destroy them. So we need missiles because this is a very godly point to destroy Israel by sending all this weaponry to Hezbollah. We want to build them in Syria. Syria is our suburb. We can do whatever we want in Syria, but we got to do it so Israel doesn't get to it. So they came up with a very Smart idea if you have the money and equipment for it. They said, you know what? We're going to build a precision-guided missile. Those are the worst missiles. Precision-guided missile factory in an underground mountain. Exactly what they've done in Iran, which is what we're doing now with American help to destroy all of their missile productions that are underground in the mountains of Iran. So they did the same thing here in Syria. They dug deep in a Syrian mountain between 70 to 100 kilometers underground. So it's in a mountain underground, so the Air Force can't see it. The Air Force can't reach it. The Air Force can't bomb it in northeastern Syria. Far from Israel, very protected by the mountain, by underground, and by the Syrian air defense. The Syrian army and the Syrian air defense are protecting this factory. Now, Israel's monitoring. Israel knows what they're doing. Israel's watching. They started in 2022, and Israel's keeping tabs. And the factory, it takes a while to build such a factory. By the beginning of the summer of 2024, Israel's like, they're going to be up and running soon. Once they're up and running, they're going to be putting much more of the Syrian Air Force and army to protect this factory. So if we want to get rid of it, we have to do it now. But how are we going to do this? I mean, it's in a mountain. It's underground. It's protected by the Syrian Air Force. There are Syrian army close by, all to protect this factory. How are we going to do it? Well, they created a mission. They spent 3 months training, a very dangerous mission that they assumed would have a very high casualty rate. They were ready in September. June, July, and August, they're training. In September, they're ready, and they knew it's now or never because soon the factory is going to actually be functioning, producing these missiles, and then forget it. It'll be so fortified. So they sent 46 planes. They sent 100 commandos. They also sent 20 medics because they assumed many people would be wounded, and they wanted to have 20 doctors on the spot to help. Thank God they didn't need one medic, but they sent 20 medics, 100 commandos, 46 planes, and they had a very precise mission where they created what they called rings of fire, meaning they're bombing to distract, to remove the Syrian Air Force, to make it very hard to reach the site. And they calculated, this was all completely precisely planned in advance, that with all of our rings of fire, we have 2.5 hours. Because after 2.5 hours, they're going to get through. They know where we're going for. They're going to get through. From these 46 aircrafts, 100 commandos rappelled down into the factory complex. Quickly, they knew exactly what they were doing, grabbed all the intelligence materials. They put down 660 pounds of explosives, primarily on the mixers, the most critical component. They detonated it all, destroyed everything, and left. An hour after they were all gone, hundreds of Syrian soldiers arrived, clueless, because where are they? They destroyed everything. How'd they get away so fast? And there's nothing left. That is a crazy miracle. Now you could say, what? I mean, they planned it and they had a lot of intelligence and they knew where everything was and they just for 3 months. It's all true. But for everything to go smooth, brilliant, like exactly like the script, that doesn't happen. And they didn't think it was going to happen. There's a reason they sent 20 medics. The cost of Israeli life, zero.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And it's like literally, when we hear these things, it's from the pages of Tanakh. This is like the miracles we read in Tanakh, but they're happening today. Rachel, were you going to add something?
Was it in the news? I missed it completely. I didn't know anything about it.
Well, I heard about it. I don't remember where I heard about it, but I heard about it and I researched it. I don't remember if then or now, but I had a lot of information on it. So yeah, I wasn't classified. I don't have any access to classified documents. I think what happens is so many things happen that maybe you did hear, but then something else happened and then something else happened. It was a very exciting time. This summer of 2024, a lot of crazy things happened. So maybe that's my point. Maybe we don't even remember, or maybe you did miss that one. But when you study it and the more information you have, it's sort of like Entebbe, right? Entebbe was crazy hand of God miracles, but Netanyahu did die, as well as some of the hostages and one of the soldiers. Like, I mean, there was some loss, which was still completely miraculous. Here, there was zero loss, which nobody was expecting. But this is how God has been operating. And it's just like, literally, I'm saying, I look at these miracles and it's like the pages of Tanakh. This is what we're seeing. I will stop here because, of course, what I'm up to, and I'm sure you remember, what happened in September of 2024. Of course, you all know, maybe you forgot the date, right? So here we see, look what's going on. If we look back at this insanity of what God's doing in 2024 for us, right? We said, we have, going back, we have in April, 200 ballistic missiles from Iran, 0 loss of life, of Jewish life. We have in May, Raisi, the president of Iran, mysterious helicopter crash. We have in July, Trump surviving the assassination. We have in July, Hania, again, how was this political leader of Hamas killed? We still don't know. Someone knows, but I don't know. We have Fuad Shukar the day before, senior Hezbollah military commander. Nobody knows where he is, but somehow Israel does and gets him. We have in August this precise attack of Hezbollah, which took all their planes and missiles above ground for us to destroy them. And then we have in the beginning of September this huge miracle, this destruction of this guided missile production factory. And then in September, what?
Pagers?
Exactly. In September, a week later, right? Nobody's sleeping there in Israel. A week later, we have the pagers, we have the walkie-talkies, and we have the elimination of the 20 top commanders of Hezbollah. Boom, boom, boom. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm going to stop at this point because that will take a bit of time to go through and really celebrate. But hopefully it was very, very, very clear the point of what we are gaining from all this, which is really to stop, to appreciate all the miracles, to be very confident and certain in the miracles happening right now, the ones we know and the ones we don't know, and to see that chain of significant but seemingly very isolated events, and to recognize nothing is isolated. All of these things are leading to the destruction of this evil empire, the empire that has held 90 million of its citizens hostage for 50 years, beyond the terror done to America, beyond the very pointed, planned, calculated destruction of Israel. And look how God is pulling it down. And obviously this destruction of evil, getting rid of the evil, is doing one thing, heralding the redemption, heralding Mashiach that clearly is happening right now. So we'll stop at this point, to be continued next week, to remember to celebrate, to remember to be very secure and confident, and to open our eyes to see, just like Purim, is it nature? Is it the hand of God? Is it normal? Is it a miracle? Happened then, and clearly happening right now. Thank you.